He raped me, stole my innocence, my security, threatened my life, threatened the lives of my family.
From 51 rapes all the way to 13 murders, this is the story of D'Angelo, who was also known as the Golden State Killer, the notorious serial killer who surprisingly was an ex-cop. We'll see in today's video the mind behind these brutal crimes and just what made him become one of the most fearsome killers in recent times. On June 15, 2016, the Federal Bureau of Investigation and local law enforcement agencies held a news conference to announce a renewed nationwide effort offering a $500,000 reward for the Golden State Killer's capture. Between 1974 and 1986, D'Angelo committed 120 burglaries, 51 rapes, and 13 murders. He was so prolific, in fact, he was responsible for crime sprees in different areas that were originally attributed to different people, racking up monikers like the Visalia Ransacker, the East Area Rapist, and the original Night Stalker. It's thought that even earlier burglaries, attributed to the Cordova Cat Burglar and Exeter Ransacker, could be linked to him. Authorities only realized the East Area Rapist and original Night Stalker were the same person in 2001 when DNA was tested. As he moved around California, his crimes escalated, beginning largely with burglaries, although he would also disturb women's underwear in the process. From there, he started to rape and murder. At one point, he was averaging 2 rapes a month. He was amongst the most notorious offenders and was very hard before he was caught. He was born on November 8, 1945 in Bath, New York, to Kathleen Louise DeGroat and Joseph James D'Angelo Sr., a sergeant in the United States Army. He had 2 older sisters, Connie and Rebecca, and a younger brother, John. A relative reported that when he was a young child, he witnessed the rape of Connie by 2 airmen in a warehouse in West Germany, where the family was stationed at the time. Following his conviction, Rebecca claimed that he was abused by their father while he was growing up. The incident may have sparked a fantasy of rape for D'Angelo, a former police officer and mechanic who served in the U.S. Navy during the Vietnam War, according to an expert who has examined serial killers' backgrounds for the FBI. Ann Wolbert Burgess, a psychiatric nursing professor at Boston College, who studied the personalities of 36 convicted serial killers in the late 1970s and early 1980s, with FBI agents in the Behavioral Science Unit, said serial criminals commonly develop a preoccupation with their crime at an early age. It was not immediately clear if his sister's sexual assault would factor into D'Angelo's criminal trial. Studies have shown that it's common for serial predators to have grown up in abusive environments, Holes said, but there are a lot of people who are exposed to that kind of trauma and don't become violent criminals. The Golden State Killer would often get angry with his victims and was probably channeling part of his childhood psychology into his crimes, the investigator said. It's important to note that while it's been observed in several cases, there is no standard pattern, but rather a correlation, where many offenders have experienced abuse during their formative years. His name is Joseph James D'Angelo, popularly known as the Golden Killer. D'Angelo attended Mills Junior High School in Rancho Cordova, California, between 1959 and 1960. In 1961, he enrolled in Folsom High School and obtained a GED certificate in 1964. He played on the school's junior varsity baseball team. Prosecutors reported that D'Angelo committed burglaries and tortured and killed animals during his teenage years. D'Angelo joined the United States Navy in September 1964 and served for 22 months during the Vietnam War as a damage control man on the cruiser USS Canberra and the destroyer tender USS Piedmont. Beginning in August 1968, he attended Sierra College in Rocklin, California, and graduated with an associate degree in police science with honors. He attended Sacramento State University in 1971, where he earned a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. D'Angelo later took postgraduate courses and further police training at the College of the Sequoias in Visalia, then completed a 32-week police internship at the police department in Roseville. It makes one wonder if all his actions were motivated by who he is and the crimes he would later commit as we go further into this. From May 1973 to August 1976, D'Angelo was a burglary unit police officer in Exeter, having relocated from Citrus Heights. He then served in Auburn from August 1976 to July 1979, when he was arrested for shoplifting a hammer and a dog repellent, which seemed like tools for aiding burglary. He was sentenced to 6 months of probation and fired that October. During the process of being fired, D'Angelo threatened to kill the chief of police and allegedly stalked the chief's house. In May 1970, D'Angelo became engaged to nursing student Bonnie Jean Caldwell, a classmate at Sierra College. Still, she broke it off in 1971 after he became manipulative and abusive, culminating in his demand that she help him cheat on an abnormal psychology test. After the breakup, he attempted to force her to marry him by threatening her with a gun, which was confirmed later in his trial. Bonnie was not allowed to speak to the court as she is not listed as a victim of his crimes, but she joined victim Jane Carson Sandler. Introducing Bonnie, Carson Sandler said, "I also want to especially thank a friend accompanying me here today. That friend is Bonnie. If Bonnie were able to speak to Joe, she would want you to know, Joe, that as just a teenager 50 years ago, she broke her engagement to you when she realized that you had become manipulative and abusive. Even a gun pointed at her face could not make her choose you." Standing in the front row, Bonnie removed her face mask so D'Angelo could see her face and looked him in the eye. In November 1973, he married Sharon Marie Huddle of Citrus Heights. The wedding was held at Auburn First Congregational Church. In 1980, they purchased a house in Citrus Heights, where he was eventually arrested decades later. Huddle became a divorce attorney in 1982, and they had 3 daughters. 2 were born in Sacramento, and 1 was born in Los Angeles. Huddle and D'Angelo married in 1973 and have 3 daughters and a granddaughter together. They had been separated since 1991, but remained legally married until last year after D'Angelo's arrest in April 2018. In her statement, obtained by the Sacramento Bee, Huddle recounted how her husband had lied to her about where he was going when she was working night shifts, leaving her completely in the dark about his horrific attacks. She described the devastating and pervasive effect D'Angelo's crimes have had on her and her family, even though they didn't experience the violence directly. "I will never be the same person," Huddle wrote. "I now live every day with the knowledge of how he attacked and severely damaged hundreds of innocent people's lives and murdered 13 innocent people who were loved and have now been missed for 40 years or more." She went on to explain how even the most banal tasks, like grocery shopping, have become a source of terror. "Once, while shopping at Trader Joe's grocery store, a hand touched my forearm while I was looking into a freezer. My heart began to race, and my body jolted. I was terrified that I was about to be harmed, when in reality, someone I knew just wanted to say hello to me," she wrote. "I have lost my ability to trust people. I trusted the defendant when he told me he had to work or was going pheasant hunting or going to visit his parents hundreds of miles away." She noted that she was often working during the night, either on the graveyard shift at a Jack-in-the-Box restaurant or when studying for law school. "When I was not around, I trusted he was doing what he told me he was doing," she wrote. Now, without the ability to trust, my relationships with other people are severely impacted. Huddle concluded her words by saying, she didn't want her words to detract from the impact statements from D'Angelo's other victims and their loved ones. It was long suspected that the training ground of the criminal who became the East Area Rapist was Visalia. Although earlier Visalia crimes dating back as early as May 1973, and other sprees like that of the Cordova cat burglar and the Exeter ransacker, as well as Visalia burglaries that took place after the McGowan shooting, are now suspected to be linked also. For 20 months, DeAngelo is believed to have been responsible for 1 murder and around 120 burglaries. In late April 2018, the Visalia chief of police stated that while there was no DNA linking DeAngelo to the Central Valley cases, his department had other evidence that played a role in the investigation, and he was confident that the Visalia ransacker has been captured. Though the statutes of limitations for the burglaries have each expired, DeAngelo was formally charged on August 13, 2018, with the first-degree murder of Claude Snelling in 1975. In 2020, DeAngelo pleaded guilty to the Snelling murder. On September 11, 1975, DeAngelo broke into the home of Claude Snelling at Whitney Lane. Snelling, a journalism professor at the College of the Sequoias, had previously chased a prowler discovered under his daughter's window around p.m. on February 5, 1975. On September 11th, he was awakened around 2 a.m. by strange noises. Upon leaving his bedroom, Snelling ran through the open back door and confronted a ski-masked intruder in his carport attempting to kidnap his daughter, who had been subwed with threats of being stabbed or shot. Snelling was then shot twice, staggered back into the house to his wife, and later died. After the shooting, the assailant fled the scene, leaving behind a stolen bicycle at Redwood Street. After the murder, Beth Snelling, 16, underwent hypnosis to gather further details. The Visalia police also committed more resources to apprehend the ransacker, and a reward was posted. Nighttime stakeouts were set up near houses that he had previously prowled, but the ransackings continued. Around 3:30 p.m., on December 12, 1975, a masked man entered the backyard of a house at W. Kaweah Avenue, near where the ransacker had been reported to frequent. When Detective William McGowan, on stakeout inside the garage, attempted to detain the man, the suspect shrieked, removed his mask, and feigned surrender after McGowan fired a warning shot. However, after jumping the fence to the house at 1501, he also pulled out a revolver with his left hand and fired once near McGowan's face, shattering his flashlight. Nearby officers rushed to aid McGowan, and the shooter was able to escape. Items collected as evidence included the flashlight, tennis shoe tracks, and dropped loot, namely blue chip stamps and a sock full of coins. On October 1st, an intruder broke in and tied up a Goleta couple. Alarmed at hearing him say, "I'll kill him," to himself, the man and woman tried to escape when he left the room, and the woman screamed. Realizing that the alarm had been raised, the intruder fled on a bicycle. A neighbor, an FBI agent, responded to the noise and pursued the perpetrator, who abandoned the bicycle and a knife and escaped on foot through local backyards. The attack was later linked to the Offerman Manning murders by shoe prints and twine used to bind the victims. On December 30th, Robert Offerman and Deborah Alexandra Manning were found shot to death at Offerman's condominium on Avenida Pequena in Goleta. Offerman's bindings were untied, indicating that he had lunged at the attacker. Neighbors had heard gunshots. Paw prints of a large dog were found at the scene, leading to speculation that the killer may have brought one with him. The killer had also broken into the vacant adjoining residence and stolen a bicycle, later found abandoned on a street north of the scene, from a third residence in the complex. On March 13th, Charlene Smith and Lyman Smith were found murdered in their Ventura home. Charlene Smith had been raped. A log from a woodpile on the side of the house was used to bludgeon the victims to death. Their wrists and ankles had been bound with a drapery cord. An unusual Chinese knot, a diamond knot, was used on Charlene's wrists. The same knot was noted in the East Area Rapist attacks, at least one confirmed case of which was publicly known. On August 19th, Keith Eli Harrington and Patrice Briscoe Harrington were found bludgeoned to death in their home on Cockleshell Drive in Dana Point's Niggle Shores gated community. Patrice Harrington had also been raped, although there was evidence that the Harringtons' wrists and ankles were bound. No murder weapon or ligatures were found at the scene. The Harringtons had been married for 3 months at the time of their deaths. Patrice was a nurse in Irvine, and Keith was a medical student at UC Irvine. On February 6th, Manuela Withoon was raped and murdered in her Irvine home. Although Withoon's body had signs of being tied before she was bludgeoned, no murder weapon or ligatures were found. Though the victim was married, her husband was away, hospitalized, and she was alone at the time of the attack. Withoon's television was found in the backyard, possibly the killer's attempt to make the crime appear to be a botched robbery. On July 27th, Sherry Domingo and Gregory Sanchez became the original Night Stalker's 10th and 11th murder victims. Both were attacked in Domingo's residence on Toltec Way in Goleta, several blocks south of Robert Offerman's condominium, where Domingo was living temporarily. It was owned by a relative and up for sale. The offender entered the house through a small bathroom window. Sanchez had not been tied and was shot and wounded in the cheek before he was bludgeoned to death with a garden tool. Some believe that Sanchez may have realized he was dealing with the man responsible for the Offerman Manning murders and tried to tackle the killer rather than be tied up. Again, no neighbors responded to the gunshot. Sanchez's head was covered with clothes pulled from the closet. Domingo was raped and bludgeoned. Bruises on her wrists and ankles indicated that she had been tied, although the restraints were missing. A piece of shipping twine was found near the bed, and fibers from an unknown source were scattered over her body. Authorities believed that the attacker may have worked as a painter or in a similar job at the Cala Real shopping center. On May 4th, Janelle Lisa Cruz was found dead after she was raped and bludgeoned in her Irvine home. Her family was on vacation in Mexico at the time of the attack. A pipe wrench, reported missing by Cruz's stepfather, was thought to be the murder weapon. Initially, investigators in respective jurisdictions did not think the Southern California murders were connected, as Sacramento detectives strongly believed that the East Area Rapist was responsible for the Goleta attacks, but the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Office attributed them to a local career criminal who was later murdered. Unaware of the Goleta murders, local police in surrounding jurisdictions followed false leads related to men who were close to the female victims. One person, later cleared, was charged with 2 of the murders. Many years later, the cases were linked almost entirely by DNA testing. On March 18, 1977, the Sacramento County Sheriff's Office received 3 calls from a man claiming to be the East Area Rapist. None were recorded. The first 2 calls received at 4:15 and 4:30 p.m. were identical and ended with the caller laughing and hanging up. The final call came in at 5:00 p.m. with the caller saying, "I'm the East Side Rapist, and I have my next victim already stalked, and you guys can't catch me." A man claiming to be the rapist called the Sacramento Police Department, saying, "You're never gonna catch me, East Area Rapist, you dumb fuckers. I'm gonna fuck again tonight. Be careful." The call was recorded and later released.
Police Department, Sheriff speaking. You're never gonna catch me, East Area Rapist, you dumb fuckers. I'm gonna fuck again tonight. Be careful.
As with the previous call, the next victim was attacked that night. During the 1977 Christmas season, a previous victim received a phone call that she attributed to her attacker. The caller said, "Merry Christmas, it's me again." The first known rape victim received a wrong number call asking for Ray on January 2nd, 1978. The call was recorded, and police suspect that it may have been the same caller who threatened her later that evening.
Hello? Yes, Ray there? Honey? Is Ray there? I'm sorry, Miss Everett.
That call was also recorded and identified by the victim as the voice of her assailant. The caller said, "I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna kill you, bitch, bitch, fucking whore. A man claiming to be the East Area Rapist called the contact counseling service and said, "I have a problem. I need help because I don't want to do this anymore." After a short conversation, the caller said, "I believe you are tracing this call," and hung up. In 1982, a previous victim received a call at her place of work, a Denny's restaurant, during which the rapist threatened to rape her again. According to Contra Costa County investigator Paul Holes, the rapist must have chanced to patronize the restaurant and recognized his victim there. In 1991, a previous victim received a phone call from the perpetrator and spoke with him for 1 minute. She could hear a woman and children in the background, leading to speculation that he had a family. On April 6, 2001, one day after an article in the Sacramento Bee linked the original Night Stalker and the East Area Rapist, a victim of the rapist received a call from him. He asked, "Remember when we played?" He confessed after being caught, as he found pleasure in making his victims know he was coming and that there was nothing they could do about it. On the evening of April 24, 2018, Sacramento County Sheriff's deputies arrested D'Angelo in the side yard of his Sacramento home. He was charged with 8 counts of first-degree murder with special circumstances. On May 10th, the Santa Barbara County District Attorney's Office charged D'Angelo with 4 additional counts of first-degree murder. D'Angelo made a confession of sorts after his arrest that cryptically referred to an inner personality named Jerry, who had forced him to commit the wave of crimes that ended abruptly in 1986. According to Sacramento County Prosecutor Thien Ho, D'Angelo said the following to himself while alone in a police interrogation room after his arrest in April 2018. "I didn't have the strength to push him out. He made me. He went with me. It was like in my head. I mean, he's a part of me. I didn't want to do those things. I pushed Jerry out and had a happy life. I did all those things. I destroyed all their lives, so now I've got to pay the price." Detectives ignored D'Angelo's initial requests to speak to an attorney, later citing a legal theory that this potential Miranda violation would be justified, with the understanding that prosecutors could not use the interview against the defendant in court. He could not be charged with rapes or burglaries, as the statute of limitations had expired for those offenses, but he was charged with 13 counts of murder and 13 counts of kidnapping. He was arraigned in Sacramento on August 23, 2018. In November 2018, prosecutors from 6 involved countries collectively estimated that the case could cost taxpayers $20 million in the last 10 years. At an April 10, 2019 court proceeding, prosecutors announced that they would seek the death penalty, and the judge ruled that cameras could be allowed inside the courtroom during the trial. On March 4, 2020, D'Angelo offered to plead guilty if the death penalty were taken off the table, which was not accepted then. On June 29th, as part of a plea bargain to avoid the death penalty, he pleaded guilty to 13 counts of first-degree murder and special circumstances, including murder committed during burglaries and rapes, as well as 13 counts of kidnapping. On August 21, 2020, D'Angelo received multiple consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. D'Angelo offered a brief apology after listening to days of pre-sentencing victim impact statements. "I've listened to all your statements, each one of them, and I'm truly sorry to everyone I've hurt." In November 2020, D'Angelo was transferred to the North Kern State Prison. As of February 2021, D'Angelo is incarcerated in protective custody at California State Prison, Corcoran.